Hi, I'm Gregg LeFevre, and this is The Compulsive Storyteller, a series of short personal truth stories where we explore the idea that truth can be stranger than fiction. This week is a mini episode featuring a short story, which we call a shortie. This one is called Owls and Sparrows. I got a call when I was at my studio one day from a hedge fund guy. He wanted to know if I did the owls on the gateposts to Herald Square. And I told him I had, and he asked me if I could make him an edition, a copy rather, of one of them. And I said I could. In Herald Square and Greeley Square, the two famous newspapers of New York used to be located, the New York Herald and the Tribune. And the Herald had on its masthead owls, and the Tribune had on its masthead eagles. And so I think it was the Parks Department commissioned me to do gateposts for the new parks they were making there. And on the gatepost for the Herald, I had two owls, and on the gatepost for the Tribune, I had two eagles. It's kind of an interesting side story. When I put up the owls, because they're kind of bulky and feathery, are not particularly dynamic birds to look at sculpturally. So I decided I would turn one of the owl's faces around. Owls have the ability to turn their face around 180 degrees. So when you looked at them from the front, one owl was facing you. The other owl, you just saw feathers, and you thought, wow, what is this? So you walked around to see what he was looking at, because he was looking directly behind him. And beneath there was a bronze cat I'd made. I thought it was a pretty good idea, and quite quickly it became a tourist destination of sorts. However, the Arts Commission did not give me permission to do that. So I was called in before them to explain what I'd done and why. I gave them my story, didn't think any harm had been done. However, the director of the Arts Commission said to me, Greg, you wouldn't find cats, because this was the cat I had put underneath the bench behind the owls. She said, you wouldn't find cats roaming around in Herald Square. And before I could keep my mouth shut, I said, yeah, right, and you'd find lions roaming around Fifth Avenue in front of the library? And I got a big laugh. But the next two projects that the Arts Commission considered were rejected. So we've come far afield. So I got the call from the hedge fund guy, and he wanted a couple owls for the front banister posts of his beautiful double wide brownstone in the West Village. And I told him, the owls are going to be way too big for the post for the stairs that come down from your front porch. And he said, well, I still want them. And I said, well, let me just make it. Well, tell me how big they are and where it's located on it was 11th Street, it turned out. And I'll maybe I can make an alternative suggestion. So he gave me some measurements for the gateposts, and I asked him also what was on his neighbor's gateposts, and that's what he was doing. This was a way for him to choose the owls who were recognized public artworks in Manhattan to kind of outdo his neighbors. One of his neighbors had griffins on either side of his front door, and his other neighbor had a pair of flanking whippets. So I suggested to him, why don't we take a counterintuitive approach to this? Why not have something that's very subtle, like a dozen sparrows sitting around on the windowsills and the railings of your place? When I told him this was a very hip move to make, I won him over. So we agreed I would make a dozen sparrows. He told me to go ahead without even asking the price, and then I told him the price, which was $6,000 each, which was very profitable because I only had to make one, and then I just replicated it. So anyway, he said, okay, go ahead. So I started to make the sparrows, and then there was a huge market correction, and his hedge fund lost a lot of money. So he called me up in a panic and asked, how many sparrows have you made so far? And I said, half a dozen. He said, stop. So I stopped. So anyway, I sent him the half a dozen sparrows, and he wanted me to install them. We had to haggle over the price to install, and finally they were installed, and they looked great. He also told me that a lot of his neighbors liked them, and some tour groups stopped to look at them as well. The years passed by. Then he gave me a call. He was moving to Florida, and he wanted me to deinstall the sparrows, which was not really what I did. And also they were glued in basically on these rods drilled into the building. So I decided, you know what? The guy's going to haggle. He's a pain in the ass, and I'm not going to do it. So I told him I couldn't. So the half a dozen sparrows are still there. As I said, it's midway along the block on 11th Street on the downtown side. And thus ends my public art adventure of the owls versus the sparrows. I'm glad the sparrows won. Are you ready to tell your own story on The Compulsive Storyteller? We're launching a new segment of guest storytelling, and we want to hear your stories. Email a voice recording to hello@thecompulsivestoryteller.com. I'll play selected stories on upcoming episodes. Try to be as clear as possible in your recording, and we reserve the right to lightly edit them for length and clarity. Leave your name or contact information in your voicemail or email, and let us know if you'd like the story to be anonymous. I can't wait to hear from you. The Compulsive Storyteller is now co-produced by Gregg LeFevre and Fadia Montserrat, who's also arranged the music and created the special effects. Emily Ramon does design, research, editing, and marketing. Peter Kokoma has made our theme music and for many seasons co-produced the show with me. If you enjoyed this week's episode, let us know. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Compulsive Storyteller, and we'd love to hear from you. This podcast is independently produced, so we really appreciate all your help and support. Share the show with your friends, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and please leave a review. You can also check out our website, thecompulsivestoryteller.com, for more information. Thanks for listening, and if you didn't like this one, the next one will be another story. All characters and events portrayed in this podcast are based on my truth, with some names and facts changed for privacy. The conversations and dialogues are based on my best memory, but are not word-for-word recreations.